Hi, this is Chef Paul, and welcome back to the Chef's Corner here at Gulf Coast State College in the fabulous Advanced Technology Center and our wonderful kitchen here. And today we're going to start something new. If you notice, I'm not in my whites. I am performing in a little bit of a different role today, and we're going to start talking about wine. And wine is such an enormous topic that we've got to find a place to start. Well, like a friend of mine told me, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. We're going to take this little bites at a time to help educate you a little bit about wine, about really the world of wine, because it is an enormous world. Today we're going to start with tools and glassware. So if you're ready, let's go. If you notice in front of me, I've got a whole line of glasses, and all different sizes, all different shapes, and you know they all have a very specific role and specific drinks we pour in them. From the far left, the slender, tall champagne flute, and then a row of wine glasses from bulbous red and whites to really large red glasses, or some might even call it a claret glass, a standard wine glass applicable for almost anything, these next three sizes, and then finally all the way down to this very small glass we might use for a cordial or for a sweet wine or dessert wine. Picking out the right wine glass is important. The thing to think about when you're looking at wine glasses is it can be very expensive, but just remember how often you're going to get to use them, and then think about the cost of what you're putting in them. Good wine glasses should be treated well, and we're going to go over all of that today. I'd like to start with the one on the end here. It's a fairly typical, very large, we would call this a white wine glass, a bit more slender than the big red wine glass, and we will notice a few things about it. First, the large bowl, the bottom of the bowl is wider than the top. This helps us to capture the aromas inside the bowl, which is really important part of tasting, and we're going to get into tasting. A very slender stem and a wide foot. Typically, when we're looking at wine glasses, we can, and you can hear them ring, usually crystal. And usually this is something we're not going to put into a dishwasher. They are quite sturdy. Some of these that I have are considered to be restaurant sturdy, which is a little different than you'll find at home. The ones that are used in restaurants typically will go through a dishwashing machine and then be hand polished by staff afterwards. There's some important other things to look for. Thin glass and a nice foot and a nice slender stem. We're typically going to hold the wine glass by the stem. You see a lot of people doing this. All this does is raise the temperature of your wine, which is something we don't typically want to do. How do we know which wine glass to use? Well, truth be told, you can pour anything into any one of these glasses that you want. It's really all up to you. But in the restaurant business, we try to have separation between the styles of wine glasses and pair them to the style of wine we're serving. This is an Auslese, which is a very sweet Austrian wine. I typically would never pour it into a big wine glass like this. We're pouring very small amounts. So for a dessert wine, I might pick one of the two smallest ones on the end. Also, a big Cabernet, I wouldn't pour a big Cabernet into a little small glass like this. There's not enough room for the wine to open up and give you all the aromas, all the sensations that you need. I might pick that nice, big, wide-bottomed claret glass. So choosing the right kind of wine glass is important. Now, a lot of it depends, again, on what you're drinking. If you stick to one kind of wine or two kinds of wine at home, you might be fine picking an all-purpose wine glass, a basic wine glass like this. You'll notice that the stem is a little sturdier on this basic wine glass than it is on the tall, slender ones. something like this is machine washable and typically fairly inexpensive, a couple of dollars a piece. They still deserve the same kind of treatment. We want to wash them, sanitize them. Usually they get dried by hand. And the one thing you want to be careful of when you're trying to clean your wine glasses is to not torque the wine glass. The stem is the weak point, not the bowl. And when you're wiping and drying your wine glasses, if you twist it from the stem, you will break it off. I can guarantee it. I've watched many a student do it. So we might pick for our home use a basic all-purpose wine glass. As you progress in your wine tasting, you might try picking out some wine glasses that are more typical for the style of wine you're going to drink. So if you're a white fan, you might pick a more slender, a large, bold glass like this. Now, the one that's really different from all of this is the champagne glass. Champagne glasses used to be short, very wide, open-mouthed glasses. And the problem with those is that they let the bubbles and the carbon dioxide go away really quickly. Part of what makes champagne wonderful, and all champagne really is wine with bubbles. So if we pick something with a very small surface area, we'll have less release of carbon dioxide, and it keeps our champagne bubblier longer. So that's important to choose a flute for champagne. I typically wouldn't serve any other type of alcohol, wine or other, in a champagne flute. These are reserved just for sparkling wine. So what other tools do you need? Well, you need a wine opener. There are lots of kinds of wine openers on the market out there. My favorite happens to be the standard waiter's friend. It's a double-hinged wine opener that has a small knife, little tooth knife for cutting the foil, an opener side, and then of course a corkscrew. Really important tool. There are so many different kinds out there. You see the kind with the too thin blades that don't work worth a flip unless you're a very experienced waiter. You see the rabbit, which happens to be the kind I use at home, and I'll show you one of those in a later episode. But my students all learn how to use one of these because this is what every waiter carries in their pocket, the waiter's friend. What are some other tools? Well, unless you like drinking a whole bottle at a time, we typically got to find a way to preserve the wine. Well, there are problems with preserving wine. Wine begins to oxidize as soon as it comes in contact with air. That's why it's stored like this. As soon as you pull the cork, air floods into the bottle and is now touching the surface of the wine. So to make the wine last longer, we got to find a way to remove the air. And there are all kinds of little tools. You can buy cans of nitrogen, and the nitrogen is heavier than air, so the nitrogen sits down at the bottom of the bottle and keeps a layer of nitrogen in between the wine and the air. That's one good way. Or you can use a simple tool like this. This is a vacuum stopper, and I'm going to show you how to use this in a later episode. Or you could just invite friends over and finish that bottle every time you open it up. That's a great way to do it too. There are stoppers actually even made for champagne bottles. And I'm going to show you how this one works in a later episode when we cut open a bottle of champagne with a sword. So I hope you're ready to take this trip with me in the wonderful world of wine. There's lots of great information out there. I'm going to recommend a couple of books. Actually, if I had to pick one book to recommend on wine, it would be Kevin Zraly's Windows on the World wine course. The most beautiful restaurant in the world, of course, that we lost on 9/11, but it is by far one of the best wine books that you can get. And I would really recommend it to anyone that's wanting to learn about wine. My students all get to use this big tome, Exploring Wine. It's a great textbook, and my students go through it as they go through the wine course. So I hope that you're excited about taking this trip with me, and when we come back for the next time, we're going to talk about opening a bottle of wine. Thanks.